recognize myself for questions. I was a federal prosecutor both before 9/11 and after. 9/11 represented a very significant failure in intelligence and information sharing between the intelligence community, federal law enforcement, and state, resulting in the Twin Towers being brought down, the Pentagon being struck, and this building, we believe, was the final target. That's why this committee was formed. That's why the department was formed, to make sure that doesn't happen again. When the Boston bombing occurred, I have to say it raised serious questions about whether we were connecting the dots, whether this information sharing was working. I had Commissioner Ed Davis testify before this committee, who told me that he knew nothing about an FBI guardian lead being open on Tamerlan Tsarnaev, that he knew nothing of the foreign intelligence warning. He knew nothing of his travels to Dagestan and back, even though a customs flag went up on him. He knew nothing about the post-radical online postings. In short, what he told me was that he didn't know he had a terrorist in his backyard, and he had 2 police officers on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And he said, if I had known that, maybe I would have given him a second look. And the answer I got back at the federal level was, well, that case was closed and it wouldn't have made a difference. I think it possibly could have. But we're not here to look backwards. We're here to look forward. And Commissioner Evans and Chief Newsham, I think you've outlined some very good lessons learned since that time. But can you tell me what we have learned since that time and what you're doing, how that has improved since the Boston bombing?
Sure, Chairman. I think the information sharing, at least since I've been commissioner, has improved so much. If not weekly contact, sometimes daily contact with Hank Shaw, who's the special agent in charge. And we've had a lot of events, whether they were free speech marches like the week after Charlottesville, constant daily contact about who was traveling where, what threats were to the city. Just 2 days ago with the Boston Marathon bombing, continually in touch with Hank on, is there any threat to what's going on? And working with the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, as well as, the JTTF, as well as the fusion centers, we were pretty comfortable that we had a pretty secure event. And I think the communication, the access to Guardian, that's all really has improved. And, if we had a big anti-gun rally, like everything we do now is through the state and our federal partners. And I got to say, since Boston, I know there was some criticism of the FBI, but I don't see it right now. I think the communication has gotten so much better. It really has. And anything, always, I reach out to the special agent in charge, and it's just almost daily communication. So I got to say, sometimes, there's some criticism, but even at the FBI, at the final takedown in Watertown, I ran that final scene. I tell the story that's not told, that when it was very hectic, the HR team came up to me and they made clear, asking me, are you the man in charge? Are you the incident commander? I said, yeah. And they said, well, every decision we're going to make from here on in is going to be through you. And whether they're throwing smoke grenades or flashbangs, they didn't take over. They worked with us. And I think ever since that time, the relationship has got stronger. The communications has gotten better. So I see that things have really improved, especially on the anniversary of the 5-year bombing.
And thank you. I think one of the big improvements, came from this committee's report. And I commend the FBI for entering into memorandums of understanding with the police chief so that they're participants on the JTTF, that they can actually talk about it. Right. And I think that was a big breakthrough as a result. And Chief, very briefly, because my time is.
I would just echo some of the comments that were made, and to say that it has dramatically improved the information sharing from the FBI. The members of my JTTF that interact with the Bureau on a daily basis are frequently in my office, bringing up instances that I need to be aware of in the event that we have to move resources to address those issues. So I've noticed a a dramatic improvement in the level of access that my task force officers have to information that the Bureau has, and then they immediately share that information. For larger issues that occur, there's a direct communication between me and the assistant director in charge over at the Washington field office.
And Chief Manley, I think the Austin bombing, the way you handled it, your leadership represents how it's supposed to work. And I think it represents the progress we've made since the Boston bombing as a country. I personally, I visited with the ATF, and you and I visited, and Steve McCaul, who's a hero of mine, and I also went over to the FBI field office to thank them and present a flag to them, to over 50 agents. And I was actually, it was remarkable, the change of culture within the FBI, that, you know, we were here to support the police chief. We are working hand in glove with him. And they provided great technical analysis and data that I know really greatly facilitated your investigation. And I thought, what a sea change for the better. Can you comment on that, and how I believe that what happened, while tragic in Austin, has become somewhat of a model, I think, looking forward?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would echo the comments of the Commissioner and the Chief as well on what we do in Austin. I won't spend time on that with the partnerships with JTTF and the information sharing that is absolutely taking place. But as we worked through the bombing spree in Austin, we formed a unified command, and we had senior representatives. If it wasn't Mr. Milanowski and Mr. Combs and myself, then it was our seconds that were present in that unified command center, so that we had people that were capable, authorized, and willing to make the decisions that needed to be made. And it was a constant sense of partnership. There was never once a request or an attempt to move the overall investigation out of the purview of the police department, but instead it was a sense of support in making sure that we had what we needed to have. The events that took place in Austin would have overwhelmed any police department across this country, the largest included. To have the federal assets come into town, to be able to go through the amount of data we were pulling, whether it was computer leads, whether it was video, everything that had to be pulled together to try and make that critical link, there was never a hesitation. And when needed, there were additional resources that were brought to bear. So the partnership, again, between the agencies, the agreement on the front end, and I think the constant communication throughout the event is what I think we should model going forward for a community that would find themselves in this circumstance, praying that they don't, but if they do, this absolutely worked. I really do believe that in that command center, that everyone left their initials at the door, whether that was FBI, ATF, APD, or the others that were there. Those initials were left at the door because we realized we had a community under siege and lives at risk, and I really think that's the model going forward.
I couldn't agree more, and I think, sir, you certainly earned your stripes. And with that, let me recognize Ranking Member Watson Coleman.